Good evening and good morning, everybody. I'm Chaesung Chun from East Asia Institute, a chair of National Security Research Center. Thank you for joining us today's conversation. I'm going to moderate today's session. We are having many webinars these days, but today's discussion is a little bit different because today's discussion is based on the EAI project, a vision for the future ROK-U.S. alliance, which will be published next month on EAI website. And 4 writers from the United States and South Korea have conducted the project for almost a year. The purpose of the project is to evaluate the current status of the ROK-U.S. alliance and to predict the future security environments for the next decade. And we are going to have a new Biden administration, which is likely to be highly different from the Trump administration, at least in dealing with the alliance network, security policy in East Asia. Authors have also discussed critical issues of how to deal with the rising influence of China in regional security matter and how to cope with unpredictable security threat from North Korea. New frontier issues, as witnessed in the matter of COVID-19, are also central issues that the ROK-U.S. alliance is going to handle. And we have tried to suggest a way to countries will continue to cooperate, not just for common security threats, but also for the regional and global security order. I'm delighted to introduce these authors besides me. First, Scott Snyder from Council on Foreign Affairs. He's a senior fellow for Korean Studies and director of the program on US-Korea policy. Dr. Patrick Cronin, the Asia Pacific Security Chair at Hudson Institute, and also Dr. Hyun Lee, a senior research fellow at the Sejong Institute. So I will invite these colleagues first and ask them to talk about their views on the alliance, but not confined to the project itself. The first, Patrick, Scott, and Hyun. And also we have 4 distinguished discussants from both countries, 2 from the United States and 2 from South Korea. First, Jin Lee, who is a Pulitzer-nominated veteran foreign correspondent and expert on North Korea. She led the Associated Press news agency's coverage of the Korean Peninsula as bureau chief from 2008 to 2013. She became the first American reporter granted extensive access to underground in North Korea, and in 2012 opened AP's Pyongyang bureau. Next, Mr. Frank who is a senior expert on North Korea at the US Institute of Peace. He oversees the Institute's work on North Korea and focuses on ways to strengthen diplomacy to reduce tensions and enhance peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. From 2010 to 2017, he worked at the Department of Defense, including as special counsel to Army General Counsel, special assistant to the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Asian and Pacific Security Affairs, and senior advisor on North Korea in the Office of Secretary of Defense. From Korean side, we have Dr. Hyun Kim, professor at the Department of American Studies, Korean National Diplomatic Academy, and Institute of Foreign Affairs and National Security. His research covers US-ROK alliance, US-DPRK relations, East Asia security. Last but not least, we have Dr. Jung Yup, research fellow at the Sejong Institute. He previously worked in the same capacity at the Asan Institute for Policy. So today, after 2 rounds of discussions between our colleagues and the discussants, we'll try to answer a question from the audience. So if you have questions, please feel free to deliver to the questions to AI. Okay, let me invite Patrick first.
Chaesung, thank you very much, and a great delight to be here today and also to be part of this study. My remarks are more general than the study report. And I'm going to pick up on the Biden administration that's coming to power as they, right now with the transition team, try to think through what is the challenge facing US-Korean relations writ large, not just the alliance in terms of a military institution. And I think that they would probably say the first thing is to focus on getting America's house in order, getting our own house in order. We're a resilient, creative country, but we are also capable of succumbing to hubris, of self-delusion and a lack of strategic empathy. And I think we've seen all of these frailties on display with a Jacksonian populist as president, who thought he could persuade Kim to do what he wanted. He could shake down our allies for profit. He could cancel exercises or withdraw our troops without warning, that he could conduct international diplomacy by tweets. The experts said he couldn't, and they were not wrong. But having said that, even without Trump on the scene as president, the inevitable drift in the raison d'etre of the alliance, its basic rationale, even if our militaries are indeed acutely focused and working together, the reality is that the changes in the world and in our countries over these past few years and decades require a reassessment of the alliance, require new investment, a recalibration at least. I think with closer dialogue, with more connectivity between South Korea and the United States, with more teamwork between our governments, our ends, our objectives can be aligned more closely without aggravating longstanding trends over disputes over the means of who's sharing the most burdens. So the disagreements over goals and ends, of course, we need to remain steadfast on focusing on peace on the peninsula and managing North Korea. But the Biden administration is going to have to make a choice. Do they stay completely steadfast behind North Korean denuclearization as the main goal, or do they move closer to the implicit South Korean position of accommodation and coexistence with an indefinitely nuclear North Korea? And I don't think they've made that determination. I don't think they have to make it right away. This is a process that they'll be putting together, a deliberative, careful set of diplomacy. But on the other hand, it's not all about North Korea, because the world has so many challenges, and it can't be reduced just to a US-China rivalry. But the reality is that the China relationship looms large for both of us as a long-term complex challenge. And it's a larger challenge than the Kim family regime poses to the United States, certainly to the region, and I think to South Korea. You don't have to sign up for Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's portrayal of the Chinese Communist Party as a Marxist-Leninist monster to take Xi Jinping at his word about his plans for the great rejuvenation of China by the middle of this century. Over the next 15 to 30 years, China wants to strive to have technological primacy that will give them economic and potentially military primacy, and that changes the calculations for our security over the next 1 to 3 decades. The China strategy is something many Koreans prefer to discuss sotto voce, quietly. And this is less the case with other US allies, Australia, Japan, the United Kingdom, for instance. You don't see the ROK-U.S. alliance as active in calling out the Hong Kong national security law or crackdown on democracy, and nor is the ROK-U.S. alliance moving in sync to prevent China's national champions like Huawei from controlling 5th-generation telecoms. So in the absence of shared threat assessment or a mission that is truly vital to both of our countries, as important as North Korea is, disagreement over means are so easily inflamed. And that's what we've seen, accusations of a free rider problem over collective goods, the old abandonment, entrapment problem of alliances. But these means can be managed provided we agree on strategy that matters and that our interests and values are being considered for both of our governments and societies. And I think that's what the Biden administration challenge will be. Now, the response in just a minute will be twofold. One, to have a new philosophy or mindset. I think the Biden administration brings renewed trust in institutions of a liberal world order, mobilizing allies and partners at the same time we're embracing multilateral institutions and trying to strengthen them, and conducting policy by expert, empirical, deliberative processes, not by tweets. And then I think the Biden administration can enlarge the aperture of the alliance, cooperation on the pandemic, on COVID, cooperation long-term on climate change, cooperation on the canons of a liberal world order, the standards of democracy having a D10 summit of democracies. The cannons of North Korea, meaning that North Korea's nuclear fissile material and IRBMs, ICBMs, while we're negotiating toward a peace accord. Controls on critical infrastructure like 5G and undersea cables, critical technology, intellectual property, and exports and scientific exchanges. The command and control of the alliance, but also how we adapt to the regional international order where information and communications are a threat and an opportunity. In short, with greater self-reflection and correction on part of the United States, greater understanding of South Korea, greater dialogue with South Korea, renewed strategy where we actually have strategic empathy and understand North Korea, understand other challenges, we can then take concerted actions across a broad array of issues, and I think be a much more effective, positive vision for the decade ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Patrick covers many issues related to the alliance. Actually, the writers discussed about North Korean issues, but not just North Korean issues. We have to deal with the rising influence of China, which is a big issue. So as Patrick said, the common threat assessment and the strategic consensus is very important, even though we differ in means and measures. And he also gave us very good ideas about new frontier issues from technology, climate change, and new health problem, and also D10 forum. So how to connect the bilateral alliance with a more global kind of dialogue network. So we have a very comprehensive preview of alliance we have to work on, that we can have a better cooperative alliance in the future. Thank you. And next, Scott, would you please?
Yeah, well, thank you, Chaesung. It's a real pleasure to join you and the other panelists for this discussion. And of course, the election of Joe Biden as president marks a shift back to a conventional approach in American foreign policy. But what does that mean for the alliance? And what does the alliance really need at this time? I just want to highlight two main needs that I see before talking about where I think the Moon administration and the Biden administration are going to have some challenges. And the two, I think, issues that the alliance really needs are, one, we need to build a forward-looking rationale and strong base for our alliance cooperation. So much of our rationale since the Korean War has been focused on the challenges of the past and the fact that we stood shoulder to shoulder in war. But we're 70 years on now, and we really need to be able to build a forward-looking rationale for our alliance cooperation that will help to keep us together. And then the second theme Patrick has already touched on that I think is critical is that the alliance is at a stage where we need to broaden the aperture of the alliance. And I think that this applies both in the regional context and in a functional context. And so what does a transition to a conventional approach by Biden mean for cooperation between the Moon administration and the Biden administration? Well, I think that actually the removal of President Trump actually reveals some, as a lightning rod for the alliance, actually reveals a number of critical gaps that are going to be magnified in the course of this transition. And so, those are going to be, I think, the main challenges that are initially going to be faced as both sides try to build coordination between the two sides. And one really interesting thing about this transition is that I think that it is going to lessen the focus on the traditional alliance management issues between our two capitals, on issues like burden sharing, even though that there are other issues like exercises and operational control transition that are going to have to be managed. I think that the major focus of attention is going to shift to the regional context. And so what we're really talking about there is how can the US and South Korea coordinate policies toward neighbors, to include North Korea, but also China and Japan. And so the first gap that I see between what the Biden campaign has said and what the Moon administration has been focusing on is kind of a gap between a peace-based approach to North Korea and a deterrence-based approach to North Korea. And I think that it's going to be important for Moon and Biden to try to incorporate those two in a logical way in order to use deterrence as a basis upon which to try to achieve peace. But that's going to be a real challenge. And I think that the other factor that is looming that everybody is kind of already factored in is the possibility that North Korea might initiate some kind of provocation as the early test for both the Biden administration and the alliance. And I see two camps developing there. One is a camp that is really focused on prevention of provocation and taking early steps in order to try to keep North Korea from shaking things up. But of course, it's really under North Korea's control, the path that they take. And another group that is focusing on how do we capitalize on the provocation in order to achieve our objectives vis-a-vis North Korea. And that really involves anticipating that the provocation will create an environment in which it's possible to exert greater pressure on North Korea in order to get back to the negotiating table. But those are issues that are, I think, going to be front and center on North Korea. A second major issue that I see in the regional context is related to coordination of policy toward China. We know in South Korea that there has been a lot of discussion about the implications of rising Sino-US competition. It's important for that dialogue to be broadened so that Americans and South Koreans can understand where our shared objectives lie, where our differing concerns may lie with regard to China, and how we can chart a course for shared action in China-related policy issues. And we all know that those China-related policy issues extend from technology to economics, to values, to regional security. So we need to have a dialogue, but not in an environment where we're immediately looking for deliverables, but one in which it is possible for us to understand each other. And then I think the third contextual issue really is related, that the Biden administration is likely to emphasize, is related to the restoration of trilateral coordination among the US, Japan, and South Korea. And I think that we already see awareness in Japan and South Korea that the Biden administration is likely to return to trilateral coordination. I think it's important to note that this was one of the things that Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State designate, worked on at the end of the Obama administration. And in fact, trilateral coordination was incorporated as one of the principles underlying the rebalance as he was able to establish a regular trilateral dialogue among foreign ministries. And then the last thing I would say with regards to broadening the aperture of the alliance is that there is real promise, I think, on what has been categorized as the frontier issues. And this is really related to space, pandemic, the possibility of trying to build our technological cooperation. I think that South Korea stands out as a promising partner in terms of application and design functions related to new technologies. And this is an area that we really need to, I think, build on as part of a broader partnership with South Korea.
Thank you very much. This is a very good preview of our report. He covers many issues from North Korea to frontier issues, and especially, I think, Trump administration, as he talks about many alliance managed issues in a very unhealthy way. It has an effect of postponing the most impending dialogue between South Korea and the United States, especially in dealing with the regional issues such as China and trilateral cooperation. So Scott focused on those issues and with some updates what's happening in the United States these days. Thank you very much. And then Sang-Hyun, please.
Well, thank you. I mostly agree with the two previous presenters' view about Korea-US alliance, and I would like to address two sets of particular challenges that from South Korea's perspective. One is the issues related with the alliance management. The other set of challenges, of course, coordinating policy in the region, particularly toward China. Well, I would say the current status of the Korea-US alliance is generally good and stable, but at the same time, let's admit there are some different priorities and perspectives on specific issues. For example, current Moon Jae-in government in Korea, the highest priority is placed on improving inter-Korean relations and progress in building a peace regime on the peninsula. But by contrast, Washington places more priority in dealing with China, for example. So in first set of challenge in alliance management issues, after the latest Korea-US Security Consultative meeting, which was held in October this year, well, major South Korea's major media addressed 3 points. One is in the joint statement, the phrase that current level of USFK maintained, that was dropped out of the statement. And some people believe that this may be the signal from the Trump administration that United States may be pushing South Korea to increase border sharing with the possible withdrawal of the USFK. Second issue was the defense border sharing. There's obviously some different perspective on this issue. Third issue was a wartime Afghan control. Well, other than that, there are a little more sensitive issues, like when to resume suspended South Korea-US joint military exercise, which was stopped for negotiating denuclearization bargaining with North Korea, and also how to secure a live fire training range needed by the US forces in Korea. And I think that will be a little bit a practical issue and policy issue, and sooner or later, both governments can handle this issue in an appropriate way. And second set of challenge, coordinating policy toward China. I think this will be more complicated and tricky and difficult part for the alliance in coming years. So the two presentations already indicated that in the coming years, perhaps US-China strategic competition will be intensified. And if that's the scenario, South Korea will be increasingly in the position to make some decision on a particular issue that touches both US and China relations. We all know well what happened when South Korea decided to agree on deploying a THAAD anti-missile system in South Korea. We all remember how China responded in that decision. South Korea had to suffer from China's retaliation. And also, I think that kind of situation can happen in the future more frequently, like an economic prosperity network. And US is also asking South Korea to join Quad Plus. And also, US demands South Korea to make some decision on sanctioning China's telecom company Huawei, like that. So this will be the kind of assessment challenge that both government, Moon Jae-in government and Biden administration also have to frankly discuss the future direction. And two previous presenters talked about what will be the new challenge in Biden administration launched in Washington, D.C. Well, I would say for the initial reaction from South Korean audience for the victory of the Biden is quite positive. In a latest contribution to Yonhap News Agency, Biden mentioned that Korea-US alliance is a blood-forged alliance. And also, he expressed his position that he would not extort South Korea by threatening to withdraw US troops from South Korea. I think that's quite kind of an encouraging signal from Biden administration. And also, I would say his remarks point out that the South Korea-US relationship is a strategic partnership that goes beyond simply a military alliance. And because of that, given that under the Biden administration, the possibility of a conflict due to pending alliance issues will decrease compared to the Trump era. But a new set of challenges will also emerge, which is the need for South Korea to keep pace with the Biden administration's value-oriented agenda setting expected to increase. For example, as part of the allied response to China, he is expected to value alliance with allies and partners and call for security cooperation among South Korea, the US, and Japan. And also, probably Biden will have a different priority in handling North Korea, not only denuclearization, but also touches the North Korea's human rights issues. So even if the Biden administration take office, negotiation on defense burden sharing and joint defense partnership between South Korea and the United States, and coordination on North Korea policy, China policy, expected to continue to be important agenda between two countries. So it's a time of a big transition in U.S. politics, and sooner or later, South Korea will also get in the president's election cycle. So I think this is the time of a transition with a huge uncertainty in both Washington and Seoul. And because I would say we need a more enhance the strategic communication between two capitals. So let me stop here.
Thank you very much. Sang-Hyun introduced some South Koreans' view about the future ROK-U.S. alliance. So we have alliance management issues, but also we have regional security issues, as Sang-Hyun remarked. We have the issue of Chinese retaliation, which we might want to talk more later. And also he talked about value issues. So the change of US administration gives us a question, what kind of value South Korea think in terms of our future of regional order? So what kind of value South Koreans really think, and how we can talk those values with the Biden administration. So that's more fundamental question, actually, that the future administration will pose to South Korean government. Okay, then we'll go to our discussants. First, Jin Lee, you first.
Hi, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to read your paper. and to join this discussion, I would first like to applaud all of you for taking on the challenge of assessing and mapping out a vision for the future of the ROK-US alliance during what has been such a tumultuous period. So I can only imagine how many twists and turns you've had to take in the writing of this paper during this particular time, with the added challenge of the COVID pandemic, which I think brings a layer of complication, as well perhaps as some new opportunities, and I would like to hear more about that. But also because the uncertainty over who would be in the White House in 2021, I think has had such an impact on thinking about the future alliance. So much of the last 4 years has been a strain on the alliance to a certain degree. And so you've certainly had to shift gears in thinking about the future of the alliance with this nail biter of an election over the past few months. I do think my personal feeling is that the alliance has been strained. There have been moments where it has been tested over the past several years, but it is a strong and abiding alliance that has its root at its base, very common objectives. And so I have faith, I personally have faith in the alliance. But I do think that what is so promising in the presentations we've heard today is the shaping of a different type of goal for the alliance going forward, and also the acknowledgement of South Korea and its rise and its potential as a different type of partner in this alliance. So I'm very interested in hearing a bit more about that. I have had discussions with all of you writers over the past year about the rise in US-China strategic competition and what concerns the South Koreans have in terms of how to manage the strategic competition, but also what opportunities it presents. I am curious, I did have a couple questions for our speakers. I wanted to ask our American speakers, because we had just heard the news yesterday that the Biden administration had announced and selected its nominations for our foreign policy and national security team. What steps and signals in the early weeks of the Biden administration do you expect or suggest that they will have to project or convey to North Korea to prevent a provocation or create space for engagement? And I would say a second question I have is, what challenges do we face? I know you are addressing the pandemic and its impact, both on the global world order and national and international security today, but we face the challenge of an increasingly isolated North Korea with no indication that they are planning to come out of that isolation. What challenges do we face if North Korea continues to stay in that phase of isolation? And how do you think the alliance can work to get past that isolation? I'll pose those questions, and I look forward to your responses.
Thank you very much. Jin addressed very, very important questions, both short-term and long-term perspective. First, what will the Biden administration do in terms of the North Korean policy in the early months? How can we cope with those challenges? And also the US-China rivalry. Actually, we had a lot of discussions because South Korea is in a very difficult position to just agree with the United States in having very hardline or security-related measures so far. So that will be a very good question. And also, how can we evaluate the current status of the alliance? Well, we have a feeling that it is not that all good. There are some problems. As Scott said, in approaching North Korean problems, we have peace-based versus deterrence-based approach. There is some disagreements as well, so we have to manage that. So those questions, I think, it will be very important, and we have to deal with that. Next, Frank, please.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in this dialogue and comment on the presentations. So I thought they were very comprehensive in their discussions of strategic alliance issues, so I won't try to address all the interesting insights that were raised. And since I agreed with most of the points discussed, let me just make 3 specific observations about alliance coordination. My first point is that the Trump administration's approach to the US-South Korea alliance, while certainly not very strategic and in many cases very damaging to the alliance, did provide the kind of shock that may occasionally be necessary to help highlight important questions within the alliance. I think the alliance is sort of like a marriage where sometimes you get to a comfortable level and act out of habit when you should instead be constantly nurturing, reassessing, and revitalizing it. And one example is US troop levels. So the 2 countries should continuously be thinking about our combined defense posture in terms of capabilities and how they can respond to the changing security and threat environment. And yet we become very lazy about accepting certain metrics like the number 28,500 as the best measure of capability, deterrence, and reassurance. I've worked on the language of several joint communiques that have come out of the security consultative meetings. And I feel like we get too caught up in certain words like 28,500 or abiding by the northern limit line, instead of thinking creatively about ways to improve the alliance. Even when it comes to the SMA, the Special Measures Agreement, the problem was not in reevaluating South Korean contributions to host nation support, but rather in the manner in which the issue was raised and discussed. The second point I wanted to make is that alliance coordination is a two-way street, and both Seoul and Washington will have the burden of meeting and managing the other side's expectations. It seems like a lot of the focus is on South Korea needing to do more to fall in line with Washington's approach to China, regional security and other global issues. And this is true, but I think the other side is that the Biden administration also needs to think about how it can better support its South Korean ally. One way is to be more flexible on North Korea policy in line with the Moon administration's thinking. Another area where the Biden administration can be accommodating is OPCON transition. This is one of President Moon's signature initiatives, and the South Korean government has continued to increase its defense budget over the last several years to ensure that it enhances its defense capabilities, particularly related to meeting the first 2 conditions of OPCON transition. When I worked at DoD, I draft the conditions-based OPCON transition plan, and I always understood that the decision to move forward with OPCON transition would ultimately be a political decision. And this is because the 3rd condition that has to be satisfied for OPCON transition is arbitrary. The 3rd condition states that the 2 allies have to determine that the security environment is conducive to OPCON transition. But depending on how you define this, a conducive security environment could be in 2 years, or it could be when North Korea denuclearizes, which may be never, right? So ultimately, I think the US recognizes that OPCON transition is an issue where it will need to be more considerate of Seoul's preferences. And this gets me to my 3rd point, which is that managing alliance coordination and each country's national interests doesn't have to be threatening or mutually exclusive. In fact, in many cases, alliance coordination is all about resolving and managing interests that aren't well aligned. One example is the United Nations Command. So despite all the concerns about the UNC being an obstacle to inter-Korean cooperation, I think ultimately the UNC played a helpful role in the Inter-Korean Comprehensive Military Agreement. There are many other examples where our country's interests had to be accommodated by the other, including the revised missile guidelines, OPCON transition, the THAAD deployment, South Korea's contributions to Afghanistan efforts, and South Korea's participation in regional efforts. So going forward, I think it would be helpful for the Biden administration to quickly agree to stronger consultation mechanisms like Seoul's recent proposal for a State Department Ministry of Foreign Affairs consultative mechanism, which would be helpful in managing these types of coordination issues.
Thank you very much. This is a very good advice to both administrations, how to deal with the short-term impending issues, Afghan transfer, US issues, which is actually a very hot issue in South Korea, how to deal with these issues with the upcoming Biden administration. And that's a very good advice from his own very practical experience, I guess. Thank you very much. And then we'll go to Hyun, please. You're muted.
Do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I think this was very timely writing now because during the 4 years of Trump government, I was very much astray about what the alliance is about right now. I mean, we transformed the alliance in 2008 to a comprehensive strategic alliance. I think comprehensive strategic alliance is still valid, but still in many issues, we were pretty much astray and we needed a lot of talk at this moment. So this kind of vision about the alliance is very important at this point. So I think I just want to talk about 4 big challenges about the alliance right now. First challenge, I think, is the US ready to manage the alliances globally? Compared to the colder period in which US GDP was 42%, now it's only 25%. The global public goods provided by the United States to ally was very important tool to manage the alliance system at the time. After the end of Cold War, there was no enemy, no threat. As Obama came in, the China rise and China threat became very serious. So I think now it's time for the United States to manage alliance systems, and the allies' help is very important for the United States to maintain hegemony in the world. But that is very costly. Maybe that's why US wants the help from allies, but I don't know whether allies will be really willingly and easily ready to cooperate with the United States. I think that is the biggest challenge for the United States to get along with the allies. This is pretty much linked to the second challenge, I think. You mentioned in your writing about shared values as an important tool to manage the global alliances, but is values enough? During the colder period, democracy and human rights values of the United States was very important tool in maintaining alliance systems globally, including US-South Korea alliance and US-Japan alliances. But more important thing, I think, at the time was the military aid and economic aid to Japan and Korea. And throughout that aid, the alliance system was managed, and throughout the alliance system, democracy and human rights was delivered to those countries. And now things are much more serious. Now, many countries in the world has strong economic dependence to China. They cannot give up their economic dependence on China. So maybe during the colder period, the division and choice of allies and partners was whether we choose free democracy based upon the United States or choose Soviet-based socialist system. That was very clear-cut choice. But now I'm not sure if it's very clear-cut. Do we have to choose US values or do we have to choose Chinese money? That's not a matter of choice. So I think this is a very serious problem. Maybe Biden has a very big homework. I mean, gathering allies would not be very easy as we think. I mean, building back better, that is a very important homework for the United States. I mean, what kind of measures do we need in addition to values to gather and strengthen the alliance systems? Third challenge, I think, is as we have seen during the Trump government's talk with Kim Jong-un, a lot of US-South Korea alliance has been weakened. Extended deterrence of US-South Korea alliance has been weakened as a bargaining chip for the North Korean denuclearization. So I think I think that would not be happening during the Biden government. But if there's any chance that Biden government's negotiation with North Korea happens, I think that's something that we have to be wary of. I mean, is the talk some kind of arms control or mutual disarmament, or is the chip or the incentive that U.S. can give to North Korea vis-a-vis their denuclearization is only something economic incentive or sanction relief incentive? I think that's some kind of serious thing we have to think about. Fourth challenge, I think, is, of course, U.S.-China issues. I think Quad Plus issue is very serious. I had a meeting with Chinese military attaché here in Korea 2 days ago, and he was very adamant that if South Korea joins the Quad Plus, there will be another Chinese sanctions on South Korea because it's military and security issues aiming at and targeting at pressuring China. So I think these are 4 challenges, and three additional things are what I want to say about what we need to do. I think first thing is that, I mean, I think it would be good if you mention about the climate change issues in your writing, because South Korean government now announced a New Deal policy, which is pretty much, focusing on the reducing carbon and, climate issue related industries are very important in South Korea, according to that plan. So I think climate change issue might be very important linkage between US and South Korea about their economic issues and development issues. Second one issue is that you mentioned here that we need a senior level whole of government dialogue. One thing I can think about is that 2+2 meeting. We had a 2+2 meeting from 2010 to 2016, but we did not have it 2018, and this year we didn't have 2+ meeting. So that kind of meeting is something we need because we have a lot of things to talk strategically, and also we need a lot of talk about what is our common threat perceptions and common visions of alliance. And last one, I think you mentioned it here in the writing that both countries need collective response system to cope with Chinese retaliation. Yes, this is something we need to talk seriously. We need some measures to cope with Chinese economic sanctions on South Korea. We need some kind of measures of US assurance to be given to South Korea when China sanctions South Korea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. He addressed many questions and with some South Korean views. Our report is really bipartisan view. This will not represent any two governments view, but Hyun works more directly for South Korean government, so I think he has already answers in his mind, even though he asks us very difficult questions. Thank you very much. And then Jung-Yep, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me for this valuable meeting between two allies. I hope that my daughter is not waking up and asking me, why are you talking to your computer in the middle of the night? But let me ask you the first round of questions with regard to your paper and the presentation today. So my question to your paper is, what is the scope of the alliance that you are thinking of when you are suggesting and proposing all those recommendations to forge the alliance? It is because that, as Patrick mentioned, that I'm not sure whether currently two governments are sharing the same threat perception. I think that defines the scope of the alliance, whether we want to go beyond the Korean Peninsula or whether we want to keep the alliance just on the Korean Peninsula. I think that will determine that what kind of burden sharing or outcomes or other pending issues to be the scope of all those issues. So Dr. Lee Sang-hyun mentioned that South Korea and the United States has like different priorities, which is that South Korea focuses on North Korean issue, whereas US want to discuss the China issues. I think that's directly related to the scope of the alliance. We don't want, like some South Koreans do not want the alliance to be the mechanism to deal with the China issues. They want to keep the alliance only for the defense of the South Korea in the case of North Korean aggression. So if there's no aggression from the North Korea, the benefit or value of alliance will. From the US point of view, if we take the China factor into the account, and if the alliance is the mechanism to deal with the China issue in the region, then the value of alliance is go up if two allies will agree. But if two allies will not agree on that scope of the alliance, there's going to be a problem between two alliances. So I think that the first part of your paper is like arguing based on the premise that alliance should go beyond the Korean Peninsula. That is why, like Scott mentioned, like frontier issues, and like Patrick mentioned, like shared threat perception. But in reality, I think there is still a strong possibility that two countries will not agree on the scope of the alliance. So at this first round, that I want authors to address how we are going to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was also a very important question. When we first think of the scope of the alliance, well, South Korean authors, I think, with Sang-hyun, that North Korea problem is a problem on the Korean Peninsula, but it needs international cooperation from United States and China. So it is a Korean Peninsula related problem, but also it's an international problem. So if we cannot deal with Chinese position with cooperation with the United States, then it will be also very hard to solve the issue of US denuclearization. If we focus on North Korean nuclear issues only from the perspective of North Korea-United States relations or inter-Korean relations, then there is less possibility to solve the problem. But still, the scope is important. And also, as Frank talks, the USFK is not just about numbers of the troops. It's also about the function of USFK with the changing security environments. For example, US is pursuing so-called multi-domain operation from 2018. And the reports, many reports say that the role of USFK should be transformed to some degree to deal with the Chinese military threat. So even though we think that USFK is just for deter or defense North Korea's military threat, but we have to think in broader terms anyway, because US is changing the military strategy in the US-China rivalry. So there is a scope issue. And also there is skepticism, I know, that to object to this kind of transformation. So this is also a very important issue. So let me turn to our presenters, our writers first. There are many questions, probably from South Korean side to the new Biden administration's policy for North Korea and China and alliance. So Patrick or Scott, you want to start first? Scott, you're muted.
Scott, do you want to go first?
Yep.
So much was raised. These are very good comments, and I don't necessarily want to answer all of them, but maybe I'll just respond a little bit to Jane and then also our Korean colleagues with regards to how do we anticipate North Korea's response to the Biden administration? You know, what's the best approach? And then also issues related to the vision for the alliance. So my feeling is that what the Biden administration should be trying to do is to continue to send the signal that the door is open for dialogue and seek private ways to sustain crisis communication with Kim Jong-un. Previously, that has come in the Trump administration in the form of love letters. I think that Biden administration should attempt to sustain a private communication channel with North Korea to the extent possible. But you know, the real challenge that Gene is pointing to is what if North Korea doesn't come out of its shell, and how can we make North Korea come out of its shell? Are we going to use pressure? Are we going to use confidence building measures? Is it going to be a combination? And then what would North Korea, you know, what would make North Korea come out of its shell? I personally think that it is going to be some kind of evidence of acceptance of North Korea as a nuclear state. But I actually think that that is something that the Biden administration is not yet going to be prepared to do. And I don't know exactly what that is going to look like in terms of consultations between Biden and Moon. And then my second point in response to the Korean commentators, very interesting that both of them essentially raised the issue of whether or not the joint vision for the alliance and shared threat perception coheres. And this is really interesting because I believe that the Biden administration people are going to come in holding to the vision for the world that was left off in the Obama administration, including the idea that there is an agreed upon joint vision for the alliance. But that joint vision for the alliance was built with conservative administrations in South Korea, and the Moon administration has not yet explicitly publicly signed on to that joint vision. But I think that the Trump discontinuity actually also can, in some ways, is helpful for the US in transitioning to a new form of alliance relationship in the sense that it really, I think that in the new world that the Biden administration is going to face, partnership is going to be critical. And the question is really going to be both, can the US accept greater representation in alliance dialogue, and can South Korea provide greater representation in that kind of alliance dialogue? And so that's what I think is really going to be interesting. The world that Obama left is different from the one that Biden inherits. And that actually means that how the Biden administration is able to adjust to the new challenges posed by this new world is going to be a critical factor as we look at those issues.
Thank you. Patrick, do you have
Yep, let me just pick up on a few of those points. On North Korea, certainly during the transition and right in the early months of a Biden administration, there needs to be continued deterrence measures to keep provocations hopefully at bay, but if they do occur, try to contain their damage to make sure they're limited in scope, not overreact. And finally, as Scott had suggested initially in his comments today, that we together in the alliance try to pivot from that perceived tension, if not crisis, toward the diplomatic roadmap that we'd like to pursue, including getting North Korea back to the table on terms that could be productive and sustainable. I think one thing that will limit President Biden will be obviously the polarization that will continue in US politics, including the Senate, even if it turns out that the Democrats are in charge of the Senate, if they win 2 at-large seats that are up for an election in January, it will be by the narrowest of margins, where the vice president would have to be the swing vote. And there's all likelihood they won't actually gain control, which means that the Biden administration not only get senior officials confirmed, and that's why people like Tony Blinken will get confirmed, but some officials might not get confirmed. The Biden administration is going to have to sell whatever they do, if they want money or law, to some Republicans. They're going to need bipartisan support. So there's always going to be that limitation. To try to get the United States government to move to acceptance of a North Korean as a nuclear weapons state is not going to happen in the next 4 years. De facto, well, we all exist with this, in fact. So there's a gap between the reality and the perception, but politically, you could not confront the politics of America and get something sold there. So we're going to have to be careful how far we can go on North Korea policy. On the alliance policy, my argument here is that we do need to broaden this relationship beyond the North Korea issue. We have challenges and we have opportunities, and together we can do so much more together in a knowledge society alliance that we have. I've suggested we can go from the East and West Sea focus to the 7 Cs, the 7 Cs of COVID, climate, the canons of liberal order, the canons of North Korea, controls of the institutions like trade and infrastructure, to command, to communication. So we have a much broader agenda that we should be pursuing. Finally, on China, a very important issue, on the economic dependency and reliance that all economies have with China, I would submit that the Biden administration gets this. That's why Joe Nye has talked about we have to manage this as a cooperative rivalry between US and China. That's why Richard Danzig has said this is a relationship, the US-China relationship is too big to fail. That's why Jake Sullivan, the incoming National Security Advisor, has written with Kurt Campbell that we have to have competition with China without catastrophe. So it's a bounded competition. The Biden administration fully gets that. That's the good news. But South Korea has to understand that it is not just your gains from trade with China. It is about the rules that China imposes. It is about the economic penalties that China imposes unilaterally, as they're doing on Australia, and as they did on Australia at the very time that China was signing up to the regional trade agreement, the Regional Comprehensive and Economic Partnership. And also, it's about over-reliance on China, as we see with medical gear, or as we see with 5G communications. All of those are areas that don't say we shouldn't be trading with China, but together, we should be thinking about the rules and the responses and our over-dependency on it and work strategically. And I think there's a lot of scope for cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hyun?
Yes, let me respond to Jung-Yup's question first. What is the scope of the alliance? Well, you correctly mentioned most Korean people may prefer the alliance focused solely on Korean Peninsula issue. But in the past administration of South Korea, we already have had some good idea about the alliance scope. For example, during the Lee Myung-bak administration, the so-called 21st century strategic alliance concept. This concept suggested that a good strategic alliance may focus on not only Korean Peninsula issue, but also regional and global issue. I think that already a Korean-US alliance has grown beyond the Korean Peninsula scope. So in my presentation, I mentioned that as Korea-US alliance, even though it started as the military alliance that was solely focused on the Korean Peninsula, and that Korea-US bilateral relationship has grown up to a very comprehensive level. It is not just a military partners, but it also includes social, cultural, economic collaboration. So in that sense, I would say that if we treat Korea-US alliance solely for the Korean Peninsula, for the purpose of Korean Peninsula level, I think that's the unnecessarily devalue the alliance and the potential of this alliance. So I'm not sure how Biden administration and South Korean government will discuss the scope issue of the alliance. But I have always argued that Korea-US alliance should focus on not only a peninsula level, but also regional and global issue. I think that's the good way forward. And regarding Biden administration's North Korea policy, my understanding is that before the Hanoi, up to the Hanoi summit, North Korea also had some positive expectation about the outcome. But since the collapse of the Hanoi summit, North Korea completely disappointed, and Kim Jong-un decided that he will not easily come to dialogue with the United States. So one of my recommendations for the Biden administration is that why don't Biden pick up the point where Hanoi summit and some of the mutual understanding that both governments will continue the legacy of the Singapore and Hanoi dialogue. Of course, there's not much things to in there, just the two summits. But nevertheless, the spirit, Biden administration should pick up the spirit of that dialogue and try to induce North Korea into further negotiation. So let me stop here.
Thank you. Probably you have to include that in the report, your last point. Okay. Why don't I turn to our discussants for the second round? It can be short, but you might have some comments or helpful input to our report or your own thoughts about the future of the alliance, anything. So let me start with Jean, please.
So I'm not sure how much more we want to build on. I feel like we've given so many comments, but I just wanted to focus a bit more on the very intriguing statement in the paper that the ROK-U.S. alliance should aspire not just to deliver peace and security on the Korean Peninsula, but also to help usher in tomorrow's liberal world order. I think this objective gives the alliance an expanded purpose, which we've referenced, one that not only restores order, but also broadens the alliance's utility past and beyond the Korean Peninsula. I think this takes into account South Korea's leadership potential beyond Northeast Asia and on the global stage. And I do like this acknowledgement that capitalizing on South Korea's growth and potential has to be part of a future vision of the alliance. And I like that there were certain areas for potential cooperation. I think there were three that were mentioned that I picked up on: health, the environment, and technology. And I would certainly like to see those points developed, because I think that we have to acknowledge that the US has so much to learn from how South Korea, as a fellow democracy, has managed to flatten the curve when it comes to the pandemic. And I also see South Korea as having the potential to play a role and serve as an inspiration for other developing countries, not just in Southeast Asia, which is that region that the Moon administration has focused on with its new Southern policy, but in other areas as well. And that by harnessing the example that South Korea can present, the United States and the South Koreans, that the alliance could be mutually beneficial in different ways that we would not have anticipated in 1953. So I think this, in the geopolitical sense, the potential for South Korea to play that middle power role is something that I would like to see developed further in the paper. But I think overall, as I said earlier, I think that it's very clear with the paper that the challenge was that there's been so much tumultuous activity over the past year, making it very hard to chart the future vision. But I think as things settle in over the next couple of months, I hope that you'll be able to clarify and really present some of those potential opportunities, particularly when it comes to health, some of these issues that go beyond security, including health, technology, where South Korea has also been at the forefront and has so much potential, and geopolitics in serving as a role model to other countries looking to navigate US-China strategic competition.
Thank you very much. I think Jean actually captured the main points of the report, and there are something that South Korean writers try to emphasize. There's an underlying theme, such as the liberal international order. I personally think that that order, that term is very important and significant for South Korea, even though there are many debates about the real meaning of liberal international order. But I think South Korea has developed under that framework, the US-led liberal international order. And now is the time that South Korea, as a middle power, tried to be a proponent of that order with the United States or with other countries as well. As a leading, South Korea can have a leading role in some areas. I think our democracy has some potential as a foreign policy asset, as witnessed in the COVID-19 situation. So there are something that we want to emphasize in the report. Thank you very much. Frank, please.
So I want to go back to the issue that Jean and Scott discussed about how we respond to North Korea early on. I think there's a couple constraining factors. One is the Workers' Party Congress in January next year that may harden North Korea's hardline views, as well as the Biden administration's own need to conduct a North Korea policy review that may extend well into the summer and prevent early action. I like how Scott characterized the two camps on the North Korea provocative action, one being a prevention camp and the other being focused on capitalizing on the provocation to enhance our objectives. I see myself more in the prevention camp. I don't understand a mentality that looks at a North Korean provocation as a fait accompli, looking at it passively, and then cynically tries to capitalize on it to enhance our objectives. I feel like we should be moving aggressively to indicate to North Korea our willingness to engage. There's ways to signal unilateral conciliatory measures like, and this is something that Sang-Hyun raised, which is reaffirming the principles of the Singapore statement. It's hard to see the Biden administration wanting to stomach maintaining any remnants of a Trump policy, but we have to remember the Singapore statement is these principles are something that North Korea has not rejected yet. North Korea has rejected previous agreements, agreed framework, the six-party statement, all of that. They still, at least at the moment, hold to the Singapore statement. It's something that maybe we can credit to the Republican administration as an achievement. So I feel like there's a way to maintain deterrence, maintain our security, and still use that as a base to take risks, not for aggression, but risks for peace. And that's something that I feel like the Biden administration should consider.
Yep, thank you very much. That's a very good advice. Hyun, please. Do you have anything to add?
Yes.
Yep.
I don't know if we can add this or not, but I think, yes, in the writing, the authors mentioned the U.S. competition as a strategic competition. I think Biden's concept of a U.S.-China strategic competition would be different from Trump ideological or systemic competition. And based upon that, I think Biden will try to look at China not as a threat, but more as a competitor. I think that if that's the case, I think South Korea and U.S. can talk about China issues. From South Korean government, South Korean perspective, China is not a threat, but China is definitely a concern for South Korea. At the same time, we are good partners, but I think China is a big concern to South Korea. Maybe in the future, it would be potentially become a threat. But I think a Biden government, US and South Korea, I think can definitely talk about China issues. I agree with Patrick that definitely South Korea is worrying about our, economic dependence on China. That's why I think now the South Korean public opinion is very much anti-China. But government view on China is definitely different from public view on China. So I think definitely we have to be wary of, making China a completely a threat from South Korean perspective. That's not easy. We want to be wary of China's rise because we do nothing about China. We do no measures based upon U.S. South Korea alliances, and China rises. Definitely, the Chinese influence on South Korea and the Korean Peninsula will be bigger and bigger. So long term, it is definitely a concern for South Korea. So I think definitely we have to talk about China issues between U.S. and South Korea. But at the same time, short-term policy of South Korea vis-a-vis China is that, ganging up on any specific security or military-related alliances or, Quad Plus or multilateral, networks, that is, related to the military aspect vis-a-vis China. That's something I don't think South Korea do anything about. And I think it would be better. This is just my thinking. You have written here in your writing about the, possible collective response measures vis-a-vis China. I think that this is something we have to develop more and more. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Hyun?
Thank you. My question is like if U.S. decides to lead the allies again, then the question is how the United States is going to lead. So once all the countries agree on the cause of the alliance of like-minded countries to deal with China, then the question is how US is going to lead the alliance. The question is, the thing is that the level of involvement of various allies and partners with the United States will be different. For example, like South Korea is not like Japan or Australia in terms of joining the United States in its policy toward China. So if US is going to rely on like coercion or like sanction to put all the allies and partners to be on board with the United States, there's going to be some like reservations from the allies and partners. And China is probably going to use all the tools that they can use to drive a wedge between the allies and the United States, like economic coercion that Dr. Lee Sang-yeon just mentioned in the third incident a couple of years ago. So I think what kind of tools that the US can use under Biden administration to make the allies and partners feel safe in following the US lead with regard to China. So one of the fear or concern that many countries, including South Korea, has is that what if we are following the US lead and cutting the relations with China and reducing the level of involvement with China, but if US turns its course towards China, then US can rebuild its relations with China, but what about the other countries like South Korea? So I think it is very important for Biden administration to reassure that what kind of tools that they can use in leading the allies and partners in terms of dealing with China. So I think whether there's that kind of discussions in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are almost up in terms of time. Let me raise a couple of points myself. I think Hyunuk's question about US capability as a global leader is a very important one, because we are entering into the period of, I think, the period of hegemonic impossibility, because no one country, even though it's very strong, cannot provide sufficient collective goods to the international needs, as we witnessed in the COVID-19 crisis. So the game is whether any strong country can effectively mobilize its allies or partners to lead the global or regional order. And I think US is in much favorable position because US represents the universal norms so far. But the question is, what's the ultimate goal of US-China policy? So I personally, for the past couple of days, read Tony Blinken's remarks, and he said that he wants to engage with China, but from a position of strength. So I guess he still has the idea of engaging with China, meaning that structurally changing Chinese thinking and behavior and try to include China in the liberal global order. So as long as we have a hope of including China in that order, I think US can lead and mobilize the allies, even though allies and partners are very much dependent upon China in terms of economy, or for China, for South Korea in terms of having a peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. So we will watch. We don't have any details so far about the US-China policy, but we'll see. The second point, in the report as well, we try to have a more detailed program to deal with Chinese any influence, especially the economic coercive means. So we try to write down some the need to collectively respond to Chinese coercive economic means, because we already experienced that kind of retaliation, as Hyun said. But we have many things to do. First, we have to define what is the retaliation. Is it a regular economic transaction, or is it a securitized, very much politicized economic transaction? So we need to have a common definition of economic retaliation. Then how can we collectively cope with that one? So yesterday, probably the Secretary Pompeo talked about collective response to Chinese economic retaliation, which is relevant to Chinese reaction to Australian these days, reactions. So we have to develop the idea in a very normative way, so that China should conform to that idea. So we have to be very detailed program. So far, we talked about very abstract or strategic issue, how can have a consensus in a broad sense in dealing with China. Okay, we have only 5 or more minutes. I picked up 3 questions, and specifically 2 questions are directed to Scott. Well, the first question is, you mentioned about the revival of trilateral arrangement. So what is your expectation about South Korea's role in pursuing this trilateral arrangement? Second one, also to Scott, these days in South Korea, we talk about Perry process a little bit. So will there be any chance that Biden administration will revive or in a changed form the Perry process in the future? Now, another question I think to Patrick is that it's not a difficult one, but will Biden administration keep Quad mechanism of regional security cooperation? Then how should South Korea respond to that kind of idea? So there is some argument in South Korea that collective security system is not very much optimal for South Koreans' option. So do you have any comments, please? So can we start with Scott?
Yes. So I think the expectation, I don't think that trilateralism needs to be controversial, because I think there's been an institutional preference within South Korea to participate. And so the expectation is really that South Korea participate in trilateral coordination activities. With regard to the Perry process, that was over 20 years ago now. And the main bumper sticker from the Perry process was that we need to accept North Korea as it is. Apply that to today, it means accepting North Korea as an entrenched nuclear dictatorship. And I'm not sure that that is going to be the baseline for a Biden policy. Just one final comment. I mean, what I hear from our Korean discussant colleagues is really the big question of how does the Biden administration intend to build alliances back better? And I think that is a critical question. And I think that it's going to involve a set of expectations for alliance partners as partners. But I think that it is also going to have to involve listening. And it's going to have to also involve a more equivalent distribution of responsibility along with contribution. And we'll have to see how it goes. It is a big challenge. It is different from what existed in the past. And I think the future of American leadership globally will depend on how alliances respond to that call.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, as the Biden administration seeks to build back better the Rust Belt of the United States, which was most centrally the target of that slogan during the campaign, the Biden administration is going to be interested in building back the global order, the liberal world order, and that includes strengthening the alliances, as Scott just suggested. That's why the quadrilateral security dialogue with India, Australia, Japan, and the United States, as important as that is, it won't be jettisoned, but it's no longer as centrally important to the foreign policy of the United States from 2021 on, because they'll be looking to build back other institutions, starting with alliances, starting with new institutions, perhaps like this Democratic 10 idea of 10 democracies helping to strengthen those institutions, or helping to write the data age, digital age trade rules for the World Trade Organization. So those are the kinds of institutions. And by the way, with China, and just going back to one of the other questions about how Biden competition with China will differ, it's largely because it's embracing multilateral institutions. It's seeking to revitalize the strategic dialogue with China, which atrophied. It's also seeking areas of cooperation. So think of John Kerry and climate change, reaching out on China. Those all will differentiate, and differentiate, by the way, is the word, by the way, that Eli Ratner, who's on the transition team at the Defense Department right now, likes to use about Biden administration China policy. That is, it's going to pick and choose its battles. It's going to narrow down the problem set and then figure out the best way forward with strong allies. That's the Tony Blinken from a position of strength, building back the institutions that are inclusive and that we'd like to see the rules enforced on all. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have to close the session. This was a very timely and very helpful session. I think we have a better idea about the future of the alliance and the next US administration. Also, I look forward to having our reports published next month soon, so please expect that. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
감사합니다.